बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे and I welcome you all here today to the 7th lecture of consumer psychology. Students, in our last lecture we started out the second chapter of our subject, which was called consumer research. Today we will move our lecture towards the subsequent topics of the chapter. However, before I take you into the heart of the subsequent topics, let me give you a brief review of what we discussed in our last lecture. Our last lecture started out by building up the basic premise of the consumer research. And we discussed that owing to the earlier business orientations, companies used to think that consumers are extremely logical and highly technical individuals. Companies started thinking that consumers will make extremely logical decisions in order to maximize their potential benefits from out of a product. So all the time a consumer goes in the market and purchases a product, the basic objective in his mind is to purchase a product that would have the best possible quality in the cheapest possible price. However, as the marketing concept was adopted during the late 1950s by a number of companies all over the world, and companies started concentrating over understanding that what consumers desire in terms of their wishes in different products, they found out that consumers are not always logical and rational beings. Consumers, on the other hand, are wishing animals who are constantly wishing about different things. And it is kind of very complicated for even consumers to sometimes find out that what are the real reasons behind their purchase. So it was found out that consumers are kind of very technical and complicated beings who are making extremely irrational and emotional decisions. That was a time when consumer research started organizing itself around the lines where drawing from the psychological concepts became extremely helpful, because consumers were not aware of why they were making certain decisions. And once they were not aware of why they were making certain decisions, then it was figured out that the reasons most of the times lie in their unconscious. So at this point we discussed one of the most powerful theories of psychology, which was called psychoanalysis. The basic premise of psychoanalysis, which was coined by a Viennese psychologist, Dr. Sigmund Freud, was that human behavior is propelled by the unconscious desires and wishes. So in order to understand the human behavior, it is very, very important to understand that what are those desires that lie in their unconscious. Sigmund Freud's theory was based upon many different techniques that were used to bring out the unconscious part into the conscious part. There was a psychologist at that time in early 1939 whose name was Ernest Dichter, and he started using the psychoanalytic techniques in order to find out that what were the real motivations for the consumers to purchase different products. We discussed an example in our last lecture of a youngster who goes to purchase a shampoo from the market. While he goes to the market, he thinks that he's going to purchase a shampoo that has the best quality and that could be made available to him at the cheapest price. However, when he sifts through different kinds of shampoos that are available in the retail store, he ends up purchasing a shampoo that's very, very expensive, and he's not too sure about the quality of the shampoo as well. So when a researcher prompts him and asks him about different reasons why he purchased the shampoo, he comes up to describing very logical reasons behind purchasing that shampoo. Something like the quality of the shampoo is very good, and he thought that the quality is worth the price that he has paid for. But we found out that the real reason was that this gentleman was attracted towards the picture of the model that was printed on the label of the shampoo. So this example was to communicate to you that a lot of times the reasons why we purchase are not in our conscious mind. And even if those reasons are in our conscious mind, then we probably would not sometimes like to disclose those reasons that why did we purchase a certain product. This aspect of consumer behavior was realized early in the late 1950s after the widespread adoption of the marketing concept by the consumer researchers. So, which is why they started using the techniques of psychoanalysis. The basic premise of building up, the basic premise of consumer research was to communicate to you that consumer behavior is extremely complicated, and we require some very complicated techniques as well to identify the real reasons why consumers purchase different kinds of products. We then went on to discussing the definition of consumer research. And as we have been talking about consumer research in our last 4 or 5 lectures as well, that consumer research is a collection of tools and methodologies that are used to study consumer behavior. There are 2 different kinds of paradigms, theoretical paradigms, that are implemented in the carrying out of consumer research. These 2 paradigms are called, number 1, qualitative research, and number 2, quantitative research. We found out that quantitative research is concerned with the quantity of the behavioral patterns. Of course, all those questions that are concerned with the numbers are studied here. For example, how much a product is liked by someone is not the question of quantitative research, but this is the question of qualitative research. But how many people use a certain product and what is the frequency of that usage is essentially the question of quantitative research. Quantitative researchers seek to find out the causes of behavior that could be generalized upon larger sample of population. Usually the data is collected from large number of people, and such data, when collected and properly analyzed through the use of different statistical techniques, help the managers make their strategic decisions about their products. We found out that researchers who profess into describing the human behavior through using the quantitative techniques are called positivists, and such kind of approach will be called positivism. In the next topic of quantitative research, we discussed about different methods that are utilized in this paradigm, and those methods include, number 1, experiments, number 2, surveys, techniques, and number 3, observations. And we also discussed that these methodologies are drawn from the natural sciences. We then discussed the paradigm of qualitative research, and we found out that qualitative research is used when we are trying to explore different ideas. In the perspective of consumer research or consumer psychology, for example, when a company wants to come up with new promotional ideas, they would like to engage in the qualitative research in which they gather up small sample of population which represents the universal sample of population, and they brainstorm different ideas with them. Essentially, all the questions that are discussed in the qualitative research are pertaining to the quality of the behavioral patterns, like how much a certain product is being liked by a certain category of consumers. Like a question that how much do I like a particular carbonated soft drink because of its gas composition or because of its taste is essentially the question of qualitative research. We then discussed that researchers who use qualitative research techniques are called interpretivists because they are trying to interpret the human behavior. And such a paradigm is called interpretivism. We then discussed the methods of qualitative research, and we identified few methods, which were, number 1, depth interviews, number 2, focus group discussions, number 3, projective techniques, and finally the metaphor analysis. Students, at this point we moved our lecture forward and we discussed that qualitative and quantitative research methods are combined to gain the real objectives of the research. So most of the research that are carried out by different marketing research agencies as well as the products manufacturing companies are actually a combination of qualitative as well as the quantitative researches. We then discussed the process of consumer research, and we identified 6 different steps of consumer research. These steps included, number 1, defining research objectives, number 2, collecting and evaluating secondary data, number 3, designing the primary research, number 4, collecting primary research data, number 5, analyzing the primary research data, and number 6, drafting the final report. We then discussed that if the purpose of study is to come up with a new idea or a new promotional scheme, then qualitative research methodology would be more useful. However, if we want to study that what is the frequency of certain behavioral pattern amongst a certain category of consumers, then we would use quantitative research methods. So in this part of the discussion, we identified those conditions in which qualitative research will be more helpful and conditions in which quantitative research will be more helpful. Students, we then discussed the concept of exploratory research, and we identified that exploratory research is conducted when researchers don't realize that what are the issues that they are trying to search for. Such kind of research may be called pilot project because it is conducted before the main line of research is carried out. Such research will help identify researchers that what are those issues and areas of interest for the consumers where they need to understand the basic problems and issues regarding the product usage, and then incorporate them into their main product strategy, product launching strategy. So exploratory research is a mini research conducted before the main line of research will be conducted. Students, at this point, let's move our lecture forward and get into the research process. We identified that the first step of the research process is collecting the secondary data. And we defined in our last lecture the secondary data is all of the information that is not actually the basic objective of the research, but these are the data that have been collected by different organizations at different parts of the time as a continual process of updating themselves about different consumer categories. Such data goes on being collected by government organizations as well as marketing research companies, and it stays in their repositories. However, when a new research is conducted, then secondary information helps them fine-tune their basic hypothesis of the research. For example, when the government organizations conduct different kind of researches, they are always concerned about identifying different trends in the population. For example, governments always keep their censuses update as to how many marriages are taking place in the entire population, what is the disease prevalence in a certain area, what are the socioeconomic backgrounds of different people, and what are the income levels of different people in different categories of the entire population, so on and so forth. All of these data stay with the government, and this data can be accessed by the marketing research companies who want to come up with a basic research in a certain area. And such data will help them build up their basic premise and basic hypothesis as to in which direction they should be conducting their main line of research. Other than the government organizations, there are private population data firms also. Private population data firms also gather up different trends in population in different places. However, the private population firms' data is usually of smaller quantity conducted on a small scale than the government organizations. Essentially, the government of a country operates in all of the different parts of the world, which is why they have the most up-to-date information. Along with that, there are different marketing research companies that are also gathering up data. A marketing research company's business is providing the consultation services to different client organizations in conducting various kinds of researches. And in this process, their part of the daily routine is conducting different qualitative and quantitative research projects. And all those information stays with them, which furnishes valuable information for them when a new research comes in, or when they are contracted by a new organization to conduct a new research. Then all the data that has been collected in the past can be referred to if that data is relevant to the current research that a company is undertaking. Simultaneously, there are a number of advertising agencies operating in the country. These advertising agencies are constantly coming up with different promotional ideas, different ideas of the promotions and advertisement strategies for many different products for many different companies. However, before they actually get into advertising different ideas or building up their advertisements based upon different ideas, they would like to conduct some basic research to find out that what would be the impact of a particular promotional scheme upon the target consumers. And even way before that, they need to identify that what is the best idea for a promotional advertisement campaign. For that, they constantly engage in quantitative and qualitative researches, and all those data also remain with them. So, secondary information is being collected by a number of sources through a variety of means and methods. But for you to understand that how secondary information is collected and how secondary information stays with different companies as well as government organizations, let me give you a small example. Let's suppose there is a foreign cars manufacturing company and they want to invest in Pakistan. For example, this cars manufacturing company traditionally has been making 3 different types of cars. These 3 different types of cars correspond to 3 different socioeconomic backgrounds, and their price range varies accordingly. So they have the cheapest price of car, the medium price of car, and the highest price of car. The cheapest price of car is sold to the lower socioeconomic categories. The medium price cars are sold to the medium socioeconomic categories, and accordingly, the expensive cars are sold to the higher socioeconomic categories of the target consumers. When this company plans to launch their cars manufacturing in plants in Pakistan, they intend to establish 3 different cars manufacturing plants in 3 different locations of the country. And their immediate ambitious objectives are that after they would start manufacturing, in about the next 4 months, they would try to get 40% of the market share. When we talk about the market share depends upon how many cars are entirely sold throughout the country. And out of all of the cars that are being sold in the country, then this company plans to see that 40% of the entire car, 40% of all of the cars that are sold in this country come from their company. So their plan is very, very ambitious. However, before they actually get into launching the car, they need to come up with an understanding of the psychology of the local consumer. And when they need to understand the psychology of the local consumer, they need to understand the behavioral patterns associated with the usage of the cars, with the purchase of the cars, what kind of colors people like over here, and how car as a commodity or as a means of transportation plays an important role in the lives of the people from different socioeconomic categories. In order to understand the psychology of the people, they need to understand, they need to come up with a big marketing research campaign. To conduct such kind of studies in the market, they need to not only allocate the internal resources or the internal marketing research department, as well as they need to contract the assignments to different marketing research agencies also. So before they get into launching the car, they need to answer certain questions. Let's suppose the questions that they have in their mind, and I'm showing you those questions on the slide as well, are like, how many car users exist in the country? How many male and female drivers are driving the cars? What are the different age groups of the drivers? What types of cars with reference to age, gender, and socioeconomic background are being driven around the country? What are the locations of the target consumers? Students, let's come back to the question number 1. Question number 1 was, how many car users in the country? Suppose this company does not get any previous information on how many car users exist in the country, then they will have to launch a full-scale research study in order to just find out that how many car users exist in different parts of the country. Now, our country is very big. There are 4 provinces, many cities, and hundreds and hundreds of towns. And if they have to gather up all of this data, then they need to come up with a big system that would have its access in all the different parts of the country to find out that how many cars are being sold and purchased. However, one way to gather up this data will be to go and contact the excise and taxation departments where all of the new cars that are being purchased are registered, as well as all the old cars are also registered within the excise and taxation department. So from over there, they could gather up a sufficiently good idea as to how many cars are being sold in this country. Other than the excise and taxation department, there are different marketing associations in Pakistan as well as marketing research companies. Now, marketing associations of Pakistan, their profession is to gather up such data and then sold this data to all of the interested buyers. So this kind of information can be purchased from the marketing associations as well. Now, if you understand that this is not the main line of their research, because the main line of their research is more concerned with understanding the psychology of the local consumer. However, before they get into understanding the psychology of the local consumer, they also need to understand that how many cars are being sold. So they cannot make it their primary research. Such kind of data, when it will be achieved from different sources, will be called the secondary data. When secondary data is attained from many different sources, with the help of the secondary data, primary research design is shaped up, which gives us the main line of action as to how shall we conduct our basic primary research. At this point, let me also tell you about syndicated data. At this point, students, let me tell you about the syndicated data as well. It is often very costly for the companies to gather up the primary research. and collect the primary data, because a lot of resources need to be consumed into gathering up the primary research. So often the solution is to gather up the syndicated data. Now, how do you get the syndicated data? Syndicated data means that there are certain marketing associations as well as marketing research companies who are constantly gathering up data. However, they not only just gather up the data, but they also analyze the data through using different statistical techniques. So they prepare the data up to a certain finished form. That data can be purchased by the interested buyers. Because essentially for the products manufacturing companies or even for the marketing research agencies, it is not possible to go on gathering up the data. So certain research companies, their main objective or their main line of profession is to go on collecting different kinds of data. And they expand their resources accordingly in different parts of the country, from where they constantly, periodically go on receiving the data. And once they receive the data, then they statistically analyze that and produce the data in the finished form. To make you understand the concept of syndicated data, let me give you a small example. Let's suppose there is a pharmaceutical company that's into manufacturing the hepatitis B vaccines. Now, this company, let's suppose, has newly launched its business in the country, and before getting into the market, they want to understand that how many other players are operating, what is the total sale of the pharmaceutical, of different pharmaceutical companies with reference to the hepatitis B vaccines. If they try to gather up this data on their own, this will become very, very expensive for them. So they contact different marketing associations or marketing research agencies who are periodically gathering up this data. Now, how the marketing research agencies periodically gather up this data? These research agencies specialize in collecting such sort of data from many different places. One way to do that will be to develop contacts and linkages with distributors all over the country who distribute vaccines to different vendors. Then they also contact different kinds of companies who are distributing vaccines at mass level to different hospitals, different clinics, as well as different distribution houses. So if the companies would gather up this data on their own, this will become very, very expensive exercise for them. So they purchase this data from different specialized companies who are whose main line of business is to gather up this data and sell this syndicated data to the interested buyers. So that based upon the findings of this data, companies could design their own primary research. From this point onwards, this is also important to understand that what is customer profitability and lifetime value data. We discussed the marketing concept in greater detail, and we also discussed the perceived benefits with reference to a product to the target consumers, and we finally discussed the concept of value also. And against this background, we finally discussed that now the companies are exceedingly realizing that the most important thing for a company is to build up a strong relationship with the good consumers. Now, good consumers we identified in our previous lectures are the ones who provide maximum revenue to the company. Now, there is an ages-old 80/20 rule. 80/20 rule proclaims that 80% of the business that a company generates comes from the 20% of its target consumers, which means that 20% of the entire target consumer population are the ones who provide 80% business to the company, and the rest of the 20% business is coming from the 80% consumers that are not so good consumers. However, they go on purchasing from the same company. So, owing to this 80/20 rules, companies would like to understand that who are different consumers who provide them with the maximum chunk of the business. And based upon those findings, they come up to calculate the customer profitability and lifetime value data. There are many different ways to collect the CLVs, which means customers' lifetime profitability value data. However, CLV can be computed from, as you can see on the slide, number one, customer acquisition cost, which means resources needed to establish relationship with the customer. Number two, profits generated from individual sales to each customer. And number three, the cost of handling customers and their orders. Students, let me explain you these 3 points individually. What is the total customer acquisition cost? Which means that a company is expending many resources in order to achieving a customer from out of the market. Now, a company is costing finances at many different steps of building up its relationship with the consumer which actually starts from identifying the consumer, then providing him with the products, and then building up a relationship that would go on in time. So all these costs are calculated. Number two was profits generated from individual sales from each customer. All the sales are calculated which are made on the individual basis, and all the revenue is also calculated from the individual sales that are made in the market. Then finally, the cost of handling the customers and their orders. This is very, very important step because certain customers or consumers are very easy to handle. They come up with kind of orders that could be easily fulfilled or placed. However, there are certain other kinds of customers whose orders are very difficult to handle. A small and brief example of that could be, let's suppose there is a fast food restaurant that provides home delivery service to its target customers. Now imagine if a customer lives far away from this restaurant from where the burgers or other fast food items would be supplied to this consumer, then to fulfill one order will become very costly because all the profit that would be generated from an individual sales will actually be used in supplying the product at the customer's place. So in this kind of case, companies tend to concentrate over building up their relationship with the target consumers over a passage of a long time period. And then based upon the eventual total number of sales made to a target customer, eventually the profit base is calculated, and similarly the marketing budgets are also allocated with reference to a customer's lifetime value. Students, at this point, let me also tell you that after the secondary data has been collected, we then get into the third step of the customer research process, which is called gathering up the primary research or coming up with the primary research design. When we talk about the primary research design, it means that now, after all the secondary data has been collected through various sources and syndicated data has also been gathered up, now the company has come up with its basic and main hypothesis as to what is the main objective of conducting the research. So primary research design is crafted very carefully and very skillfully, and very expert researchers are utilized, and their services are utilized in order to come up with a primary research design. When we are talking about the primary research design, then once again we are talking about the two basic paradigms. So if our research is about understanding the purchasing patterns of different consumers or the product usage patterns, then we are going to utilize from the quantitative research paradigm. However, if we want to understand the consumer's socio-cultural, psychological characteristics, then we would like to get engaged into a qualitative research study. Research to secure such information is more time-consuming and more costly for the companies. And companies a lot of times cannot do it on their own, which is why they contract the research assignments, the primary marketing research assignments, to different marketing research companies. Students, let's talk about the design of the primary research. The design of the primary research is based upon the purpose of the study. If the purpose of the study is to get new ideas, then we would use the qualitative research design. If the purpose of research study is to describe the available information, then we would use the quantitative research design. Now, let me tell you about what quantitative research design consists of. There are different tools, methodologies, and techniques that could be used in the quantitative research design. However, the quantitative research study consists of, number one, a research design. A research design is the basic map of the research, that what is the relevant information that we are going to get after the end of the exercise, what is the route, what is the methodology, procedures, and tools that will be used. So in short, all the summary of the research that will be carried out subsequently is drafted in the basic design of the primary research. We then concentrate upon the data collection methodologies and instruments. Various data collection methodologies may be used, and a variety of instruments can be crafted, or a variety of available instruments can be used to conduct the basic primary research. Finally, the most important thing is the sample design. Sample means the target population or the people upon whom the research will be conducted. Usually companies have segmented their target population of the consumers, and they would like to learn more and more about their target consumers. And once they have identified a particular segment, then the sample design also consists of representatives from their target population. The quantitative research designs are also of different types, in which the main and important research designs include number 1, observations, number 2, experimentations, and number 3, surveys. So let's talk about the observations. Observation is one of the most important methodology of the quantitative research design. Of course, in our general life, we use observation so much in order to acquaint ourselves with the issues, or in order to get the basic information about certain issues that are prevalent. Similarly, when we talk about consumer research, then observation becomes very, very important, because only through making keen observations, a good understanding can be made about the relationship between the product and the consumer. However, when it comes down to consumer research, companies and marketing research and agencies would like to engage expert observers to conduct their basic observations. These expert observers are qualified people in the field of consumer psychology or consumer behavior, and they have been working in the field of research for quite some time. So they go from place to place, which includes sometimes sitting at the shopping malls, or sometimes installing the video cameras and tape recording the consumers in the real life situations, and just making the observations. So there are a variety of methodologies and ways that the observations could be made. In order to understand the importance of observations, let me give you a small example. Once there was a company that was into manufacturing the Listerine. We use Listerine to clean our air passages or to clean our mouth, and usually we use Listerine before brushing our teeth. And most of the people who are used to using Listerine, they do so early in the morning when they are brushing, or every time they brush they use Listerine. This is just to kill the bad breath and feel fresh inside. And simultaneously, the objective is to keep the germs away. Listerine is a bad-tasting, bitter liquid. Now, a company started manufacturing Listerine that was mint-flavored. They wanted to take the benefit of the fact that this Listerine was not as bitter as the ordinary or regular Listerine would be. So they contracted a marketing research agency in order to find out the better relationship between the Listerine users and how do they actually consume Listerine in their day-to-day practices. This marketing research agency paid 37 families to install video cameras in their bathrooms just to study their Listerine usage behavior. So two different groups were designed. One group was using the regular Listerine, which was bitter tasting, and the other group was using the mint-flavored Listerine. And they started studying the behavioral patterns. Now, expert observers would go through the videotapes and observe the Listerine usage behavioral patterns. They found out that people who were using the mint-flavored Listerine liked it so much that one of the gentlemen, even in the morning, he put the Listerine in his mouth, the mint-flavored Listerine, and sat in his car and drove till the next block, and only then he swished it out. On the other hand, the regular Listerine users would just put it in their mouth and swish it out immediately after that, and then they would use their toothbrushes. So this finding was extremely interesting, and this could have helped the mint-flavored Listerine manufacturing company in coming up with an effective promotional strategy in which they could have taken the benefit of showing people who are using mint-flavored Listerine, and they like it so much that they like to keep it in their mouth. So taste, in a way, could have become the unique selling proposition that could have been projected in their promotional and advertisement campaigns. So in this way, observations become very, very useful for the companies in order to come up with the future promotional designs. What the observers get is also very, very important. Observers are sometimes trained psychologists or sometimes the people who are experts in consumer behavior. By watching people interact with the products, observers gain a better understanding of how the consumers relate and associate with their products. And once they are able to understand the bond, the intensity of the relationship between the product and the product user, then they could very well use this kind of information in the promotional and advertisement campaigns. Students, there are a number of ways the observations could be made. Recently, there are a lot of mechanical and electronic tools that are also used to make the observations. However, if you want to go by the scientific route and if you really want to base your decision upon scientifically calculated information, then the mechanical cameras are also used. These are the high-speed cameras that are fixed up on different places on different roads, and they calculate the amount of traffic that flows through certain sections of the roads. These high-speed cameras on different parts of the day start photographing the flow of the traffic. And after the end of the day, all of the photographs are gathered up and the number of traffic is calculated more in a very manual way. So after all those photographs are calculated, then they could have a good idea as to how much traffic was flowing through a certain section of the road. And the decision is based upon the information that has been received through the cameras, and billboards are installed on all those places where the flow of the traffic is the maximum. The other technological devices also include the supermarket frequency shopping cards. Supermarket frequency shopping cards are distributed amongst the good consumers of a particular retail store, or anyone who wants to become the member of a particular retail store can get that supermarket frequency shopping card. This has a magnetic chip on the card, and every time a consumer enters in the retail store and all the shopping that he does through the retail store is all that information is collected and put into the computer. And the magnetic swipe strip on the card will help the computer read that how much shopping has been done by a particular consumer. Now, all of this data can be collected and directions can be found as to which consumer purchased more from a particular retail store. Usually, the consumers who purchase more will get the promotional discounts. This not only helps the companies or retail stores bring up some loyalty for the consumers, but it eventually also becomes very beneficial for the consumers as well, because if they purchase more, then more promotional discounts will come their way, and all of these promotional discounts would help the consumers make their own individual savings. While all the data that has been gathered up by the retail store will help them identify the good consumers, and upon the good consumers, they could always invest more to come up with a better relationship with them in the future. Coming up with a better relationship with the good consumers in the future would help them maximize their profit potential from every individual consumer, because once a consumer is served in a better way, then a good relationship is formed, and the possibility is that this consumer would keep coming back over and over again to this particular retail store. Other than that, there are frequent flyer cards which are used by different airline industry as well. There are some passengers or there are certain professionals who have to constantly travel from one city to another city, or sometimes they are also going long distances. So they are the frequent flyers of a particular airline. The airline gives them once again the swipe cards, and through those swipe cards all their travel mileage could be recorded. And after doing a certain mileage of journey, all these frequent flyers would get certain promotional benefits, which include flying free for a certain number of miles after they have accumulated a certain number of points. Similarly, in the credit cards industry, every time you make your purchases through the credit cards, you get certain points. This is more like a promotional scheme which is not being used by all of the credit cards available out there in the market, but there are certain credit cards that use this particular strategy. So after the consumer of a credit card has accumulated certain number of points, they also get the promotional discounts on that. So students, you would have understood that in a way, making these observations is made contingent with certain benefits that consumer receives out of making himself available for the company to observe them. Simultaneously, consumers get tied up with the membership of a particular company or a retail store, and all this information can be extremely useful and beneficial for the company for their future promotional and advertisement strategies. However, at this point, there is one concern that this kind of information about the consumers is not usually anonymous, and this kind of information is usually shared with other departments as well, who identify the good consumers good consumers who have been purchasing certain kinds of products. Now the other departments would offer them other products as well. Another way to use observations is to build up a good relationship with the consumers also. For example, certain banks or financial institutions, every time they get a new client who opens a banking account in their financial institution, in their initial forms, they also fill up the information as to what kind of tea or coffee do they prefer, what kind of beverages do they like, how much sugar do they prefer in their coffees and teas, and what kind of sweets do they like. So when all this information, very intimate information about a consumer is available, this is put in a database, and every time this client walks into the bank, the customer services representative can just punch a few keys on the computer and find out that what is the preferred drinks or sweets for this particular consumer, and he immediately serves him with the same drinks or the sweets, which adds to a very pleasant surprise to the customer, and it eventually helps the company tie up a very sound and good relationship with their target consumer. So observation techniques not only just help companies gather up their data, but they have been molded in a way that these techniques will help the consumers come into a better relationship with their companies as well. So this was a bit about the client's habits. However, at this point, let me tell you that there are certain ethical issues also involved in this whole process, because all of this data is not kept anonymous. This is frequently shared between different departments. Let's say, for example, the good credit card consumers of a certain banking institution, once they find out that a particular consumer always pay back the full bills by the due date, then they share this information with other departments. Let's say, for example, the auto loans departments or personal investment loans departments, then they would contact these good consumers and try to sell them other products as well. There has been a good lot of debate as to should the companies use this available information about their target consumers, because sometimes this information is shifted to other departments, and other departments try to take advantage of this information as well. While they are trying to take advantage, this is not a personal advantage that they are taking, but they are actually trying to share the database of the good consumers. And there has been a lot of discussions that is this ethical or is this not ethical? What do you think about it? Do you think that this data about the good consumers should be shared between different departments in order to promote the sales of different products in a company? Or do you think otherwise? Just think about this, this question on your own. At this point, let me tell you that various other techniques are also used to observe the consumers, and a few of those are like using mechanical observation devices as well as the physiological observation devices. For example, if a marketing research company comes up with a promotional advertisement for, let's suppose, a certain kind of product, then they would like to see that what is the reaction of the target consumers about this particular advertisement. So they gather up a number of consumers and they show them the promotional advertisements pictures. And while they are showing them those advertisements, they install eye cameras to monitor the eye movements of the subjects who are watching these promotional advertisements. They calculate the eye movements, and they also calculate the time the duration of the time for which the eyes of a particular subject stay on a particular picture. This is done so because a lot of times consumers are not aware that why do they like certain picture. However, if their eyes stay fixated upon a certain image for a longer time period, then that definitely means that this picture has attracted them in certain ways. Other than that, sometimes other kinds of devices are also used with the eye cameras, and certain electronic devices may be placed upon the heads of the subjects. So the eye cameras are monitoring the eye movements, while the electronic devices placed on the heads would calculate the brain activity. So when the subjects are watching a certain picture, the eye camera would reveal information as to how long the eyes have stayed fixated on a certain image, and during that time period the brain activity will also be calculated in different hemispheres of the brain, so that more relevant findings could be made as to what are the pictures that have really attracted the consumers. Students, at this point, let me take you towards the next tool of the quantitative research, which is called experimentation. We all have been hearing the word experimentation for a long time period. So let me tell you a bit about experimentation as it is used in the quantitative research methodologies in the consumer psychology. Through experimentation, it is made possible to test the impact of a certain promotional or advertisement campaigns. Usually, marketing research companies come up with many different ideas, and those ideas are tested by showing those promotional advertisements to various subjects of the research. In doing so, they are trying to find out the cause and effect pattern, and the researches that try to identify the cause and effect patterns are called the causal researches. In order to understand the causal researches, let me tell you that for every effect there is a certain cause. And if you think about the cause as a variable that a researcher can manipulate with, then you could call it independent variable. And for every effect that would be resulting from out of the manipulation of the independent variable would be the dependent variable. Let's suppose, in order to make you understand the concept of independent and dependent variable, let me tell you that suppose if there is a tennis player and he's preparing for a certain competition or tournament, then the more this tennis player would prepare for his matches, the greater would be the chances for him to become more successful in his tournament. So in this way, we could consider the preparation, the exercise before participating in the tournament is more like an independent variable. So essentially, we can differentiate between different players with reference to their training. So if training is the independent variable, then what is the dependent variable? The dependent variable is the result of the practice that shows itself in terms of achievement during the tournament or enhanced performance during the tournament. Let me briefly tell you that in what situations the experimentation is used. Experimentation's major purpose is to test market. Test marketing is a concept that connotates the process of identifying that what will be the impact of a certain promotional advertisement upon its target viewers. Prior to launching a new product or a new package, there are many different handles of the marketing mix that we have studied in the chapter number 1 that need to be manipulated with. For example, in marketing mix, we studied that the 4 basic elements of marketing mix are number 1, product, number 2, price, number 3, promotion, and number 4, place. So before a company gets into actually launching a product, all these 4 elements can be manipulated with in an experimental situation. For example, a company comes up with a new and different kind of soap that would not only clean the skins of its users, but also leave a healthy glow on their skins. But the marketeers would want to know that what is the maximum price that could be paid by the target consumers for this excellent soap. So they would come up with a promotional production initially, in which they would come up with different sizes of the soaps, and they would distribute those soaps amongst the target consumers. Not in a great number, but they would try to choose a particular sample to wherever they would distribute these soaps. Now these soaps are in 3 different sizes, and these are distributed to the target consumers. Along with the soaps, they are given a questionnaire to be filled up. This questionnaire carries different kinds of questions with reference to the price. And since the company is extremely sure that this kind of soap will create good results and consumers will tend to perceive its benefits more and more as their usage will be increasing with reference to this soap, so they will come to get the filled questionnaires after 2 or 3 days. After 2 or 3 days of experimentation with the soap, consumers come to find out that this not only helps clean their skins but also leaves a good glow. Then the questionnaire is filled up and different prices are marked by the consumers. And on the average, whatever the best price is marked by a number of consumers is taken as the final price. Similarly, the product packaging, the product labeling, and even the advertisement flyers can be distributed amongst the target consumers to get their basic reaction upon them. Now, this is a campaign of test marketing, and through this, companies come to understand that what is actually the impact of a certain independent variable upon the target consumer. And based upon the results, they could finalize their main strategy. But however, the test marketing should not be confused with the exploratory research, because exploratory researches are conducted on the large scale, on relatively large scale than the test marketing. Students, at this point, let me also tell you about the virtual reality methods that are also used. In virtual reality methods, consumers are actually taken into the stores through the virtually created reality in the computers. Consumers could enter in the store on their computer's screen monitors and then go from one shelf to another shelf, and using the scrolling mouse, they could pick up the products from different shelves and they could see them from all possible corners. And in this way, while consumers or the subjects of the study are watching different kinds of products through the virtual methods, the trained observers are watching their behavior, and they are trying to monitor that on which particular product or which particular package a particular subject has stayed for a longer time period. So virtual reality methods are also being used in making in test marketing. So students, this is just about the end of the lecture today. And I leave you with this, all of the material that we have discussed today. And just go through the books and keep concentrating over this material, and have discussions with your friends also if any questions come to your mind. So let me say goodbye to you today till we meet in the next lecture. अपना अपने गिरदोनवा के लोगों का और अपने दोस्तों का ख्याल रखिएगा. अल्लाह हाफिज़.